Welcome to College Football Monday. My name is Pete B, and this show is presented to you by McCoy's Auto Repair in Radford, Virginia. This is a Sons of Saturday live show. I come to you each and every week to tell you what's been going on in college football, recap the weekend that was, and also give you a heavy dose of what the Hokies have been up to. In this episode, I am, of course, going to get to all the action that happened this past weekend. I'm also having Rodger Sherman on the show to talk about his college football road trip. You might know Rodger from a variety of things, but this season, he is doing a road trip all season long across the nation to go to as many college football games that he can. And this past week, he was at Virginia Tech for the Thursday night game against Syracuse. So I want to talk to him about his visit and just about his whole deal this season and how it's been going. I'm, of course, also going to do my playoff four later in the show, go over the AP poll, all the good stuff. For now, hop in the chat. Make sure to like the video. Liking the video really helps us. And if you are watching on Twitter, come on over to YouTube. It's easier for engagement. It helps us. The numbers are better. And it's just a better all-around experience. So hop over to YouTube if you are watching on Twitter. I'm going to call this past Saturday Sleepy Saturday. There was some good action. We had Oklahoma, Kansas, Oregon State, Arizona, USC, Cal, ODU, JMU turned out to be a pretty good game. But I still think there was a lot of games we were hoping were going to be better, like Oregon and Utah. The cocktail party, that was a dud. Texas and BYU was boring. Notre Dame and Pitt was super boring. Duke and Louisville, a shutout. Wasn't expecting that. So I'm going to go with Sleepy Saturday. It wasn't as scary or as survival-y as the last couple of weekends, but there was still some good action. And I'm going to start with the Kansas and Oklahoma game. Rodger will be joining me at 9:15. That is the plan. And I'll add him to the chat at that point. Kansas pulls off the upset against Oklahoma, 38-33. This was a really, really good game. Kansas got out to a 14-0 lead. I think Oklahoma scored. Then there was a delay. People were complaining the momentum for the Jayhawks was going to be ruined by that delay. Well, it kind of was and it kind of wasn't, because Oklahoma did score three straight touchdowns to take the lead in the second quarter, but Kansas was only down 4 at the half. Bean had an awesome sprint to the end zone later in the game. I think that was early in the third quarter, made it 26-21 Kansas. And OU took a 1-point lead after a long drive and a failed 2-point conversion later in the game. There were 2 more lead changes in the fourth quarter, and OU was up 33-32 when Kansas went 80 yards in 7 plays, about 1 minute, converting on a 4th and 6, got them down to the OU 9, and then they ran it in on the next play. Huge, huge win for Kansas. Hadn't beaten Oklahoma in 18 tries. We're talking back to like the year 2000 here. They tore down the goalposts. They threw them in the lake or the water or the pond or whatever the heck it was. And they did it with their backup quarterback. Now, that's a little bit of a disservice to Jason Bean, because that kid is really, really good. But it's true. And he was great despite being a backup. He was really good in the game. And the defense did just enough on third down and in the red zone to win it for Kansas. So OU, I had them in my playoff 4. I'll talk about it a little bit later. I really wanted them to pull this win off because I wanted to take them out of my 4 after winning, because I was feeling kind of wonky about it ever since I put them in after the Texas win. I felt like I had to put them in. I felt like the Big 12 had an easy path for one of those teams to get to the playoff, and Oklahoma was undefeated. Well, now they face OK State and Stillwater. They have West Virginia. They got to go to BYU, and they play TCU, who is not very good. But that's all before the potential Big 12 game, Big 12 championship game, I should say. So even if they do win out, and even if they do beat Texas to win the Big 12, I still think they could get left out of the playoff if things play out the way I think they could. And I'll talk about my playoff 4 later. Speaking of that playoff 4, Oregon spanks Utah 35-6, beat them up along the lines of scrimmage. Utah didn't score a TD in the game, and in a game for the first time since 2018. I got that stat from Chip Patterson. That is nuts. The not having a real quarterback those chickens finally came home to roost in this one, because Pig farmer Bryson Barnes had an 18 QBR, and he has played well this year, but not so much in this one. Utah couldn't throw or run. And Bo Nix was great. 248 passing, total touchdowns for him, a 95.2 QBR for good Bo Nix. Great win for the Ducks on the road. And if you don't think at this point that they're better than Washington, despite losing to Washington earlier in the year, then you haven't been watching. And I'll talk about Washington a little bit here. Very happy to have put Oregon in my playoff four last week. Georgia crushed Florida 43-20 in Jacksonville. Florida took a shot early on a fourth down, kind of a trick play. It didn't work, and it was all downhill after that. Bud Elliott's commentary about that play and just about Florida taking that shot, I thought was correct in that, like, Napier was trying to win the game. He wasn't trying to not get blown out. He was trying to beat number one Georgia. And it didn't work, but at least he took the shot. Florida is just not on the same level as Georgia, and it was clear. And Carson Beck is really starting to look like a championship quarterback, in my opinion. 315 yards, 11.3 yards per attempt, which is outstanding. 2 touchdowns, 87.8 QBR. 4 sacks for the Georgia defense. Although Florida was doing okay against them earlier in the game, but ultimately they did put up 4 sacks for Georgia, and it was 36-7. I mean, if you look at the numbers, Florida had some yards in this game, but it was 36-7 before UF put up 2 75-yard drives. So it wasn't close. It was a nice win for Georgia. The Death Star is almost fully operational, as I put it on Twitter, and I may have to put them back in my playoff grouping. Talk about that in a little bit. Unexpected Pac-12 shootouts was another story of this weekend. Washington and Stanford played a wild one. Washington survives yet again, 42-33. Ashton Daniels for Stanford, their quarterback, had a great game. 367 passing, 81 rushing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Ayo Mayor, the guy who went off for Stanford a couple weeks ago against Colorado, 9 receptions for 146, and this one in a touchdown. Tiger Bachmeier, a wide receiver for Stanford. First of all, incredible name. He has to be related to Hank, I would have to imagine. But Tiger Bachmeier, 10 receptions for 95 yards in this one. Penix had 4 TDs himself, an interception. Polk went for 148 and 2 touchdowns. But this is 2 weeks in a row now. We've seen Washington struggle with a lesser opponent. And it's 4 straight wins by Washington, all by less than 10 points. So they are not dominating their opponents like they were earlier in the year. They got to go to USC next, Utah after that at home, at Oregon State, and then Washington State to finish the year. Somebody's going to get Washington. I don't think they're playing well enough for USC, Utah, Oregon State, or even Washington State to knock them off and give them a loss. And if nothing else, I believe Oregon's going to beat them in the championship game. So that was the first shootout. USC and Cal played a 50-49 game. Cal missed the 2-point conversion to win it at the very end. And this was after USC scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. So Cal they had a very good shot and probably should have won this game. Caleb Williams, 4 total touchdowns for him, 369 yards passing. Fernando Mendoza for Cal, he was pretty fantastic. 292 yards throwing, 48 rushing, 4 TDs in his own right. It was a strong performance. Jaden Ott went for 153 and 3 touchdowns, 7.3 yards per carry. No defense in this game. Over 1,000 yards of offense, but USC, just like Washington, they escape again. Oregon State at Arizona was another great Pac-12 game. Beavers lost 24-27. And this was kind of a weird one because Oregon State played well. Like, they really played well, but we've been talking about Arizona on this podcast ever since Colby came on and said he was friends with the father of Noah Fafita. And Fafita was great. 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, just the 1 pick. Beavers had more yards, more first downs, just 2 penalties, and 0 turnovers. But Arizona made a couple big plays in the passing game, 2 TDs for Michael Wiley, and they did just enough to win the game. Really nice win for the Wildcats. It's crazy that when we were talking about all the good teams in the Pac-12 at the beginning of this year, Arizona was not one of them. And now I'm looking at the list here. They're better than Oregon State, just beat them. They're better than Washington State, they beat them. They're likely better than Colorado, and they may be even better than UCLA. We'll find out next week because UCLA and Arizona are going up against each other. Ohio State beat Wisconsin 24-10. Wisconsin did tie this thing up 10-10 in the third quarter with Locke at QB. No more Mordecai for Wisconsin, but Marvin Harrison and Travion Henderson took over. 3 total touchdowns by those guys, nearly 300 yards combined. I think Ohio State had just over 400 yards of offense. 300 was Harrison and Travion Henderson. Nice win for Ohio State on the road in Camp Randall 1 week after that Penn State win. Like, they're coming down off that win. They go to Camp Randall and get a win, even though they didn't cover. The spread was 14.5 against Wisconsin. It was a good win. They overcame 3 turnovers. That Ohio State defense is for real. And I need to talk about this JMU team and this ODU JMU game because it was a really good game. ODU had a slim lead early. It kept looking like JMU might pull away. ODU kept battling. The Monarchs got down deep in their territory in the fourth and settled for a field goal. But they couldn't muster anything after that. That was at the point where, like, I felt like ODU should have done everything they could to score and take the lead, but they did not. They never got another chance at it. Both QBs played really well. Grant Wilson, the guy who played us in game 1, 277 yards passing, 2 TDs. McLeod, 340 yards for him, for JMU, 3 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions, and that helped keep ODU in the game. The wide receivers for JMU just went nuts. Brown and Surratt both had 8 receptions and 135 yards, 3 total touchdowns for those receivers, and they ate up that ODU secondary. JMU has 2 road games left, Georgia State and Coastal, which should be awesome. The Coastal game should be fantastic. And they play UConn and App at home. Now, neither of those teams are good, but UConn's been feisty in games, and App did finally just get off the mat and beat Southern Miss. But JMU has a decent shot at this perfect season, and that is wild. Their defense is the real deal. I can see my guest here is in the green room, so to speak. I'm going to add him to the chat right after this ad read. As I said at the top of the show, College Football Monday is brought to you by McCoy's Auto Repair in Radford, VA. Who doesn't love supporting a local family-owned and operated business? That's exactly what you get with McCoy's. They were established in 1980, and they offer full service, including major and minor repairs. They can take care of your state inspections. They can take care of your oil changes. They will sell you tires. And that's clutch to have a place that you can not only buy those tires, but also get them put on. So make sure you head over to McCoy's Auto Repair this season for all of your vehicle maintenance needs, or give them a call. The number is right on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, which you should be because we are live here on Monday morning, 540-639-2933. And you can also find them on Facebook. Just like that old hokey buddy of yours, McCoy's, a name you can trust. And now I'm going to add my guest to the stage here.
Hey, how's it going?
What's going on here? Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for joining me.
Good. Is my audio okay? Can you hear me fine?
It's all right. Are you just the laptop mic?
I got AirPods.
Okay.
I don't quite trust the cheap laptop I bought before I started this trip to satisfy the audio requirements here.
All good, man. All good. It's a pleasure to have you. I've been following your work for a long time, and
thanks.
If I'm doing an introduction for you, like, I didn't really know where to start because you're most recently with The Ringer, which everyone knows The Ringer. But I'm trying to think of when you first came into my consciousness. It might have been back with like the Solid Verbal guys. You were doing a lot of work with them, right? Like SB Nation articles, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I used to work at SB Nation doing college football stuff for them. So that's kind of where I got my start on the college football internet, writing a Northwestern sports blog and for SB Nation. And I think attending so many Northwestern football games made me want to go see other team stadiums. So that's the genesis of my project.
I think I remember you going to like a Rose Bowl with Ty and Dan back in the day. Is that right? Like, you guys were all in a house like somewhere, and
we went to the 2016 College Football National Championship.
That's what it was.
in a big Airbnb together, and saw Alabama win. Uh, yeah, a very. I'm not sure if Airbnb was a thing yet at that point, but I feel like there were like 11 bloggers in a weird house in Arizona.
That hit me like yesterday. I was like, wait, he was wearing like you guys were having a blast that weekend. You're tweeting out like what you're wearing to the games and stuff, and it just looked like a lot of fun. Your latest endeavor is Road Raj. You are doing
Yeah,
a college football road trip all season long. You kind of stepped away from the traditional journalism or blogging or whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
And you've been to 28 games now on the
exactly.
season.
Yep, nailed it. 28, and Virginia Tech was number 27.
That's
Uh,
right. That's right.
getting you set up for the segue, but yeah, I'm making videos. I'm putting stuff on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, that means you know that YouTube exists, and you can go over to Road Raj is the handle. But yeah, I'm just like putting out videos. But really, more than anything, I'm just kind of enjoying myself.
Yeah, well,
I've been
that's what
to
I wanted
28
to
college
ask you.
football games. Yeah, go for it.
Like, how did this come about? What made you decide to leave it all behind and just go out on a road trip? I know you're like married and have a dog and everything like that, but
Two dogs.
two dogs. So what made you want to do this? And like, how are you doing this?
So mainly it was just like a realization I've had over the last few years that like even though I was professionally employed writing about college football, I had never been to any of the places that I was writing about. And college football is such a sport that's about literally the places. Like like just going to Virginia Tech last week. Like so much of it is like you have to realize the pocket of the world that it's in and what surrounds it, and like it's not something you get from just turning on the TV at Thursday night. And I was writing about it mainly from my couch. I was blogging from home, or every once in a while I get to go to a national championship game or something like that, and which is awesome, but also not the same as like a home game in at a school stadium. The thing that really inspired me was there was a guy who did it last year, Ben Chase, who I think he went to 78 games. I'm not trying to break his record or anything, but I was just like, I'm going to take a road trip. I'm going to do this. I'm going to drive around the country, see as many games as I can. And so my wife was like, yeah, go ahead, go for it. Like it sounds like this is something you're excited about. So when you're excited about things, they tend to be good. So I did it, and I've been driving around. If you are looking now, you can see that I'm in a very generic hotel room in the Quad Cities of either Iowa or I think I'm in Illinois.
Okay.
Um,
And can we
it's
talk about your shirt for a second? Because
yeah,
you've got a
sorry
West
about that.
Virginia shirt. I've got my
Sorry about
Virginia
that.
Tech on.
Yeah, I sorry about that. It's just what I grabbed out of my
Do you
bag
just
when
have
I
like a whole bag of like home field shirts or something?
more or less, yeah. I have they don't have a shirt for every game I'm going to, but I asked them if they could give me a shirt for every time that they make a shirt for the home team. So yeah, but the funny thing is, I already owned a Virginia Tech home field um, crew neck. Like I already had that as part of my collection, so they didn't need to give me one, which is really helpful because the logistics of them shipping shirts to me on the road has been iffy.
I can imagine.
They have a lot of orders coming in, and I don't know where I will be on a night to night basis. So the Virginia Tech shirt I'm wearing in my Virginia Tech stuff that I haven't fully posted yet with the fighting gobblers with the turkey's head on them. That was a shirt that I'd owned for several years because I really like that turkey. But I never gotten a chance to bring it to its spiritual home until Thursday. That
Well,
Virginia Tech shirt I'd worn it at like Thanksgiving, and I would sometimes just wear it randomly around New York, but it finally got to come to Blacksburg on Thursday.
yeah, and that's the main reason you're on the show. Though I have loved your work,
I appreciate
having a reason to have you here and talk about your experience in Blacksburg is why I reached out to you. And let's just talk about a little bit about the game. What did you think of Blacksburg? How was your experience with Lane Stadium and everything around it?
So here's the funny thing about going to all these games. Like I said, it's 28 games. Um, to do that in 7 and 8, 9 weeks, 9 weeks, that means a lot of weeknight games. And basically, the experience with attending a game at most schools on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is like you get there, um, and invariably someone at the tailgate will tell you, "Oh, like it's a shame you came to see us on a Thursday night because you know we do so much better on Saturdays. I normally come to the game with my wife and kids, but they're like my kids have school tomorrow. I couldn't bring them out until midnight tonight." You people at Virginia Tech, you do not ascribe to that belief system.
No.
The Virginia Tech Stadium was fully packed on Thursday night for a game that like people weren't feeling great about either. And not only was I told it's okay that you came here on Thursday night, people were like, "We invented Thursday nights. This is what we do best." And if you told me that online, I would have rolled my eyes, but after seeing it in person, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yes.
Just the way that like everyone around this, like the person I was staying with was like, yeah, like my boss and my boss's boss are both Virginia Tech grads, so pretty much everyone has the whole afternoon off. We're all going to be in the tailgate lots. You get there at 3 o'clock and they're already going pretty hard. And most schools just don't have that energy for weeknights. I don't know if there was some debate about whether the students had off.
I know personally one student that did have off. I don't know if every single student was off of their classes. A lot of professors would give it back in the day when I was there. They would give it off if you had a late class, but some are sticklers and wouldn't do that. But I think a lot of the students, if they did have class, they weren't there. It started
Yeah.
early. It started early, and I'm so glad you did get to experience the Thursday night because it's not a very unique Virginia Tech thing, but it means a lot to Virginia Tech. And many of our fans make a point to take off work either on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday to make it down. And it was a good game for you to attend because you're right. From a national perspective, going into that game, you're talking about Syracuse and Virginia Tech, two middling
Yeah.
teams this year, and even for the last couple of years. And the place was full. It might have not been a technical sellout, but it was very full. It was very loud. The weather was perfect. Did you get a chance to do any tailgating or walking around talking? I think I saw you like watching the Hokie Walk or the band or something.
Yeah, I saw a lot of stuff. So first of all, also not just like the perfect night, but like you're right, it was in the 70s, and it was like also it's peak leaf season. I don't know what's going on with my hair here.
Oh, you look perfect, Raj. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it was peak leaf season. Like, and I've been telling everyone I can talk to that like the like Blue Ridge region of the country is my favorite one to drive through, and I've been telling people that since September when I went to West Virginia. But like, oh man, it was just perfect. The reds and the yellows up on the mountains around Blacksburg, and the sunset hits right before the game. Tailgating, yeah, I met up with some of my followers like in the lots around the stadium, and I saw like you said, I saw the Hokie Walk. I saw the band, the Corps Cadets band playing Enter Sandman on their glockenspiels, and that made me very happy. I I was very thrown off before the game by, I think your cannon is bigger than some schools' cannons. There was a real reverb there.
It's loud. It's very loud.
And yeah, I met people, who had driven in from DC. I met this guy who had driven in from Bluefield. I forget which side of the border he was on, who ended up having nicer seats than the ones that I had access to. So that was awesome. And like, yeah, it was just a different level of weekday pregame than pretty much any other school I've been to this year. Like, absolutely. I mean, I can say like with no doubt that it was the most fun I've had at a weeknight game.
Well,
this year.
That's great to hear, dude. Did you get a turkey leg? Let me ask you that, because
I did.
nice,
I didn't
nice.
post pictures of it because they're very unappealing to look at. Watching me go to town on the turkey
Oh, dude,
leg.
it's not something you want to eat in front of like anybody, but you happen to be eating it in front of 60,000 of your closest friends.
Yeah, it's really unmanageable. It's like,
Yes,
and it comes out. It was too hot to eat for like a solid like 10 minutes of game time. It was
scorching
just
hot.
like, yeah. But it was much better than I expected it to be. I think it was um, like I think my association with eating any amount of large turkey like that isn't sliced is like that it's going to taste like Thanksgiving and it's going to be a little dry. But no, they crushed it with that. And yeah, I looked back at the pictures of it and I was like, I can't. It's just like there's like liquid forming here and like there's pieces of the turkey like hanging off and like sometimes I don't care about how I look when I'm doing things. I am living more or less out of a car um, with a limited amount of t-shirts. Well, a lot of t-shirts, but like I only have t-shirts. So like I have pretty low standards for myself, but the turkey leg was something I'm keeping private for now. It'll probably end up in like the videos I post over the course of the week, but like yeah, it was pretty grimy.
I've had many over the years. They do taste great, but the amount of grease is
Oh yeah.
so much that like I pick and choose my spots. I don't get them every game because it is an absolute freaking mess.
It seems like a novelty food. So, like the idea that people at Virginia Tech are eating them regularly, the laid legs, is like it just feels like there have to be better methods of consuming food. And then again, it's probably the best method of consuming food
We
is
need
you're
to,
holding a.
you know how you were saying about grab it's too hot. We need to create like the turkey leg koozie where like you put the bottom of it in like a rubber thing so it collects the grease and keeps your hand off it. Like we could market that.
Yeah, like they have the little tin foil or aluminum foil like around the bottom, and you're just kind of like it's still hot to touch. Um, But yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of innovations in the koozie industry recently. Just the idea of a turkey leg koozie. I mean, the other funny thing about it, and I'm sure people have pointed this out to you, is outside of Texas, I don't think anybody else consumes their mascot during the course of the game.
I had never thought of that. That never occurred to me that we're eating the Hokey Bird.
Yeah, I mean, it like RIP to the Hokey Bird. And meanwhile, the Hokey Bird is like walking up through the stands and smiling, and like there are people chowing down on his friends. And like it's not like removed. It's not like if you're eating a burger, it is just this amount of meat, and it could come from a cow or anything. But that turkey leg, you're like, oh, I see that is part of a larger turkey. And the Hokey Bird is standing there with his smile on his face, looking around the stadium, and I don't know how he handles that mentally.
It's a lot. Let's move to the game real quick because while you're doing this and it's more of an experience of
Yeah,
the atmospheres and the places, are you still analyzing the football and were you impressed with how he came out on Thursday night?
I mean, yeah. Part of me wants to just say it was an atmosphere that like I could not play in that atmosphere, and Syracuse obviously could not either. But everyone around me was just kind of like stunned. Like we're normally not getting like 7 yards every rush on first down all night long. I forget what the yardage. I believe it was like 300 to 0 in yardage. I think I looked up.
You are pretty much on point there. It was 0 yards for Syracuse
I
rushing.
looked up on the scoreboard and saw the 0, and I'm like, you normally don't leave the game and see a 0.
Right.
And it's probably um, one of the games that I had the least idea of what was going on just because of the amount of alcohol I was consuming beforehand. Because I knew I wasn't driving after the game, and like I said, you guys do it well. But it felt like, in many ways, I got the gist of it. But
Yeah.
the
I'll give you a lead
It's
in. How about this? It was 23-0 midway through the second quarter. And right there, it was a sense it was over. That like Syracuse just couldn't do anything on offense. Oh, sorry.
yeah. I've got to turn off an alarm that I forgot about. Sorry about that.
That's okay, Raj. Yeah, Syracuse just
Talk,
couldn't
I
do
can hear you.
anything on offense. They punted on their first 5 drives,
Yep.
and we scored on our first 6 drives.
Yeah.
And so it was feeling good. And normally, whenever Tech might get a little bit of a lead these last couple of years, it's like, well, when's the shoe going to drop?
Didn't
And
drop.
and it didn't drop, and it never really felt like it was going to drop.
No, it was really just a euphoric experience, start to finish. Um, and I mean, you've got to wonder, like how. I mean, it's stupid, but like how much more used to this experience and this environment, like playing on a Thursday is a bit of a weird thing to do. Like you have to change your game prep all week. You have to, do things differently for the players. And they seemed at home, and Syracuse looked entirely lost all night
Yeah.
long. Um, and uh, if you're going to make Thursday nights your thing, and then you're going to come out on Thursday night and the other team does not look like it knows where it is, maybe that's a factor.
Yeah. And you picked the best Thursday night game to come to in 7 years. Because I don't think we had won at home on Thursday night since 2016. Another game I attended against Miami. But we don't play on Thursday night every season, but we played
Yeah, I
on a
got that.
number of them at home, and we haven't won because Tech has been down the last since 2016 when we went to the ACC title game. It's
Yeah.
been a bit. So you picked a fantastic game. Did you do anything after the game? Did you go downtown? Did you just crash?
Yeah, I was staying with one of my followers, like reached out and said, "Hey, I've got a spot for you." So I pretty much fell asleep in his car, uh, and then had a nice drive back. Part of the thing about my trip is that I am driving everywhere, so I don't always get to go all in on the experience like I did when I had a place to stay, um, like that night. So sorry that it's boring, but
No. I mean, you
I was
said you
like,
drank a ton during the day because you didn't have to drive yourself personally. So you got to enjoy the day and probably
yeah, I
did you
got
have
to
some
enjoy
bourbon?
it. Yeah, I went to a tailgate that had at least 5 different bourbons that I had never seen before, and I didn't consume all of them. But I'm not a I wasn't fully aware of the different flavors that could be involved. I was like, oh, this didn't make me instantly recoil with when I consumed it. That's not the type of whiskey I normally drink. Um, so that was really awesome. And yeah, I feel like I lived up to the experience. Some parts. The beauty of filming things is that the filming is not foggy, just my memory.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to get a couple questions in before you cut
Yeah.
out about your trip in general. Are you keeping a ranking system or some type of tracking of all the games you're going to? I know you're doing the videos and everything, but like when you do these spots, because I know you've been on pregame shows and postgame shows and whatever, like, and people say, "What's the best place you've been to?" Like, are you keeping a journal like of the ranks?
I don't have an official ranking system. I know which ones are my favorite, but also I keep on coming up with like I can tell people that Virginia Tech was the best weeknight game that I went to, and it's entirely true. And I feel like that speaks to the experience, like in its own right. Um, so I guess I'm like coming up with little terms I have for each school for what they're good at, like
Okay.
that in my head, like then I don't have to keep re-ranking like the best every time, because like I keep saying the best game I went to and the best like place I saw was when I watched Oklahoma play Texas uh, in the Red River game at the Cotton Bowl, which is like its own little strange, its own enormous strange world. Like they play at the Texas State Fair. It's not a home game for anybody. There's all this weird food that's being eaten. It's an awesome place, But I say that's the best thing I've ever been to. But then I'm additionally able to say the best home game I went to was another game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so like, I don't have an official ranking system. That would probably involve me having to say which one is the worst, which I will not do on camera.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Right. Right. Well, and you can describe them in different ways too, because I was going to say like you met a lot of fan bases over this trip. Like, what would be like the most endearing fan base you met? And I'm not say let's just go outside of Virginia Tech, so you don't have to use us. Like, was there any particular fan base where you're like, wow, those people were great?
that's a great question. I keep saying that the best time I had was at West Virginia and Morgantown. I don't know if that's a contentious opinion to have
You
among
son of a
Virginia Tech.
bitch.
I feel like you don't have to play each other anymore, but there's always some weird opinions about neighbors.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
but I saw them playing Pitt back way in the early part of the season.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and
Backyard
it was
brawl. Nice.
and it was a night game against a rival that they hadn't played at home in a decade, and Pitt still had Phil Dracovic at quarterback, and he's just really terrible. And they dominated. And yeah, that's the most fun I've had around a group of people all year long because
Well,
they
and they're
were
big drinkers down there. The whole region likes to drink a lot, and Morgantown definitely likes to get after it. I saw on your BYU video, they gave you this like long donut to eat. You
yeah
talked
the
about the turkey leg. Like what is like the best thing you've eaten since you've been on this trip?
I'm going to be honest. The turkey leg might be the best in stadium food I've had.
Wow,
Like
nice.
like it was like some element of like the uniqueness of it, and it was actually really good. And again, I honestly, I'm generally not drunk at the games, but that has to be a factor into me thinking it was extremely delicious, right? Well,
Absolutely.
you eat them pretty routinely, so clearly, like it's a thing you go back to.
Oh, it's tasty. Yeah, they're
It's
very
tasty.
very good. Yeah.
You're not just doing it as a bit, which
No.
like I think I started out doing it as a bit, and then it kind of morphed into uh, not a
Like if
bit.
they didn't taste good, we wouldn't go back because it, as we described, it's like nasty. Like
Yeah,
like it's a
and I
messy
got it.
experience.
I got it pretty close to the bone, which had to be really upsetting for my seatmates to be around. But like, yeah, that I honestly, if I think the best food I've eaten in a stadium, that has to be close to the top. The best tailgate was LSU.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, they I got a lot of Louisiana flavors that day, and it was awesome.
Did you
And
have alligator?
no, the only place I've had alligator was when I saw Utah playing Florida, because when you play Florida, you have to have an
Naturally.
alligator prepared. So some guy there like got an alligator shipped to him and then roasted or smoked it, and it 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 tasted like food. It didn't have like honestly I was expecting it to have more like gator twang to it,
Hmm.
and it really just tasted more like sort of a generic smoked like chicken or smoked turkey or something like that.
What was the scariest group of fans? Like, just be like, oh, these people, like, I'm kind of terrified of what might happen later.
Um, the least happy fans were the Ohio State fans.
Really?
They were just mad the whole time, and they won a game to remain undefeated and are considered the number one team in the country by a lot of people. And they were just upset the whole time. Like they win the game. It's like the biggest game of the year. It's like it was I think number 3 versus number 5 against Penn State. I saw them. They had game day there. They had Big Noon Saturday there. And after the game, everyone's like, "We're not going to beat Michigan like that." And I'm like, "That was you're undefeated. Why are you so mad?" The scariest. I don't think I feared for my health at any point in this trip.
Or maybe
Um,
just intimidating, like an intimidating environment.
that's a good question. Um, I'll have to.
Like, I would
Most
imagine
the thing is,
LSU is pretty high up there.
oh, like intimidating for the opponent. Yeah, LSU at night. Virginia Tech felt. I mean, nobody else plays metal either. Like that really helps. I'm not pandering. It, I'm not pandering, I swear. But like, yeah, that was like I felt the chills there when you guys had it going. LSU at night, I don't know, man. It's just every stadium I go to at night feels particularly
Mm-hmm.
like they did a great. They did like it's just the level of anticipation that people have been waiting to get out all day. So I've just named you a bunch of night games that I've been to.
No, but that.
LSU, you guys, Morgantown was also a night game,
Oh
and
yeah.
I don't think that'll be true for the MAC games I go to this week, though.
You just went to a snow game. You were at an
Mhm.
NAIA Game of the
Yep.
Year in Iowa,
That's
right?
yeah. I asked my followers which game to go to after the. That's what I do every week. After the Ohio State game, I felt the need to get off the beaten path a little bit after seeing everybody win, after seeing Ohio State win that game and still end up mad. So I went to this game in Northwest Iowa between the number one and the number three teams in the country and the last two defending national champions. Northwestern College in Iowa, which won the national championship last year, and Morningside, which has won three of the last five. Um, and I went there just because the game was good. And they said in the forecast it will snow, but I don't think anyone expected it to snow that much. Like,
I liked your one
like
tweet where you were like, they said it's supposed to snow today. I don't know when it's supposed to come down. And you're like covered in snow.
yeah, there was snow up in my beard, like just like hanging on there. My hat and the top of my head were covered. It was really tough tweeting out there. I was really working hard, harder than the football players for sure,
I'm
because like
surprised you
my
had like
fingers weren't doing
service.
well.
Yeah.
Well, the service was really bad in Blacksburg,
Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad.
uh, and it, oh, I'm not sure if I've shouted out App State here. App State was another awesome one. I love
I really
mountains,
want to
man.
go to a game
Huge,
there.
huge mountains fan.
Yeah,
But in Iowa, I had service because there's only 3,000 people at the game.
true.
And it was an entirely different world, but the people were just so they've been waiting for this game between these two teams all year long, and they were like just ready to go from the morning, but like they were also excited to have me in a way that I don't think anyone else has been, because like they don't get a lot of outsiders, because not a lot of people hear about their programs, and they're off like several hours away from any interstates in Iowa. So they were just extremely prepared to show me a very good time, and they gave me a lot of soup because it was 20 degrees outside, and like yeah, they um,
You managed to
it's
find a place that was harder to get to than Blacksburg.
yeah, you guys aren't that far from the interstate.
Yeah, it's true. Not since the
No,
interchange came in 20 years back, that's for sure.
no,
But
the less mountains though. In Iowa, I would say they have like no elevation at all. So that as a huge mountain enthusiast,
yes,
was that was the one downside. Driving past corn for several, and I'm on the other side of the river from Iowa right now. But yesterday I drove 5 hours across Iowa, and you kind of get the gist in the first 20
yeah.
minutes.
What I do love the fact that you're doing this choose your own adventure kind of thing. Like you
Mhm.
have people vote, and you
Yep.
guys, like guys listening, like make sure you're checking out Road Raj on YouTube. Make sure you're checking out at Roger. I don't know how you got the handle at Roger. You must have been the first person on Twitter ever after
Um,
Jack.
I, I have a slightly misspelled name. It made it a lot easier. Rodger. You see,
Ah,
all the other Rogers are Roger.
well,
Like
yeah. For Aaron
Roger
Rodgers,
Roger Clem. Well, yeah, but that's not his
it's not his
Twitter
first.
handle.
Yeah, it's not his
It's
first
not his
name.
first name, and it has an S in it, Rogers. So like like Roger Clemens, Roger Maris, etc. I don't know why I went two baseball guys, but both
Especially one
Roger.
one that's very dead or old. Yes.
I don't know. They were just the first ones I could think of. But Roger, I'm Rodger, so that's what you should look for.
It's a great handle, though.
But there was one like spam account which had Rodger, and in like 2017 or so, I told Twitter, "Hey, this is very clearly a spam account," and they got rid of it, and I swooped in.
But I'm so glad that your people that vote, all the followers and
Yeah,
everything,
sorry.
they chose to send you to that NAIA game because it was paired with Virginia Tech. Because it was
Yeah,
either that or I forget what the other game was,
it
and then
was
Georgia Southern or something.
it was Georgia State, Georgia Southern, was the other Thursday night game, and honestly, like those are two good teams. It's like a rivalry in Georgia. Like I was kind of like part of me was feeling bummed I didn't get to go see that. I was like on Wednesday, I was like, I don't know, the Virginia Tech team isn't very good. Syracuse isn't very good. Like maybe I kind of wish I got to the other game. That that like washed away really quickly.
Mhm.
I had no FOMO that night, and I'm really glad I got to go to Virginia Tech too.
I promise I'm going to let you hang up in 1 second. I just
You're
wanted to
fine.
ask you about when you're traveling, you used to be like, you were covering this sport and like tracking who's good and all this stuff. How are you keeping up
Yeah.
with that aspect? Podcasts, like who do you like to listen to? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I have a couple of podcasts I listen to, but broadly, I'm not watching most college football games, which is a real big shift to me.
Hmm.
Because in my job, I would just spend 13 hours a day watching college football every Saturday, um, multiple screens, you know, Twitter refreshing for 13 straight hours. And now I'm just like, I'm going to see a game. If it's a morning game, I'll check out the night ones. But a lot of the time, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, because you want to
Like
be
you
out
said,
with the people and like maybe in a bar or somewhere
yeah,
else hanging out.
very different way of understanding the sport. Um, I'm definitely behind on that. I listened to three podcasts in the car. Like you said, Solid Verbal, Split Zone Duo, and Shutdown Fullcast, which is more
I knew
jokes
you were going to
and
say full
bits.
cast. I knew that was going to be on the list, but I was
They're
curious.
mainly people I've worked with at
Uh
some
huh.
point in
Uh
time.
huh.
But like between those three looks at the sport, like I feel like I got a pretty decent like summary of what happened from shutdown full cat from the full cast like joking about it to like split zone duo gives like pretty analytical insights into the games, and it's yeah, I'd say I get a pretty decent picture because I'm also in the car like 20 hours a week, so that gives me enough time to catch up on podcasts.
Yeah, because I was thinking like if I try
It's the
to
most
ask,
podcasts I've ever listened to.
yeah,
I'm generally not a podcast listener, but like I am locked in this year.
yeah, I was thinking if I ask him like what his playoff four is right now, like it might not be, it's not going to be as expert as you would have been in years past.
No, I legitimately don't have an answer for you. I One of Ohio State and Michigan. I want both of them in. Uh,
Georgia.
I would say Georgia. I'd say Georgia seems like a pretty solid answer. Um, I was really excited about Washington. Uh,
They've been playing some tight ones lately.
yeah, um, and I'm going to see them play Washington State in the last week of the season
Oh,
at
that's awesome. Apple
home.
Cup.
Yeah, last one.
Yeah,
That's the
well,
I'm gonna try to see the so this week I'm gonna go to the last game between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, um,
that's a great game.
and then the last games between the teams in Oregon and Washington that are kind of getting ditched by the rivalry. So
And I'm
that's that.
hoping that like these aren't like Apple Cup, even if they're in different conferences, it should still happen out of conference. We hope, right?
It might. We don't know. I
Yeah,
mean, Oklahoma State has been pretty clear. We don't want any part of this. If you're leaving the
right.
conference, you're ditching us. So go to hell.
That's so
Um,
sad, man.
it's a bummer. That's why I'm glad I'm getting out there this year, and I didn't choose to wait to do this.
All right, so I asked you about the podcast. What are you listening to musically? Like, what's your go-to music playlist? You classic rock guy, hip hop guy? I know there's the Fetty Whopping thing that you've always had.
Yeah,
You saw Fetty Whopping this year, right? Didn't you?
yeah. It was 1738. Purdue lost to Wisconsin. Yeah, that was the gag is that when a score is 1738, I tweet about it because that's I would say that so the car has Sirius in it. It's a rental car, and I just like flip through. Like I have like 2 classic rock stations on there, 3 hip hop stations on there. I have the pop station, which like sometimes you need, but the key is there's like they have the 90s and the 2000s stations, and you really need the throwback jams when you're just mindlessly driving for
Right.
hours and hours and hours and hours. Like the boy bands, the like the Ja Rule era hip hop songs are really clutch. But yeah,
I'll save
that's
you
what I'm
my
going
Ja
to.
Rule impression for another time.
Let's can't wait. But seriously, the just having a station that's just, and you know it's oddly been weird. They have like I don't think I had listened to the Beatles in many years, but like I feel like we used to listen to it in the car on road trips when I was a kid, and they have a Beatles channel, and I don't know, something about it feels right when I'm just driving to have like songs that I listened to when I was a child in a car.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe that explains the 90s station too.
Well, man, thank you so much for spending all this time with me and just giving me an insight into your trip.
No problem.
You're heading to Stillwater next?
Not next. That's where I'm headed on Saturday, but I have 3 games to go to
Oh,
before that.
oh my God. What are the games this week?
So I'm going to the MAC games in Ohio
Okay.
Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay.
Um, we're still debating whether this should be the plan, but there's a game in Wyoming on Friday night, night game in Wyoming, and it might be too long of a drive to do that. And then
Oh, man.
Oklahoma State, it's about 10 hours from Laramie to uh, Stillwater,
It's
but that's
closer than
still
I would
the
have
plan.
thought, actually.
You
But
know, what the University of Wyoming is located in the southeastern corner of Wyoming,
okay.
so it's pretty close to the border with Nebraska. So to get to Oklahoma, I'm more or less just driving all the way across. Well, I'll need to look at the map, but it's yeah,
It's all good.
it's not as far as you'd think. There was another part of me that wanted to do the there's a game in Lubbock on Thursday, and I was very surprised. TCU Texas Tech in Lubbock. I'm not going to it; it's too far.
Yeah.
But like, I was surprised by how close Lubbock, Texas is to Laramie, Wyoming. I was like,
Really?
those seem like different parts of the world, but Lubbock is all the way in the northwest of Texas, and Laramie is all the way in the southeast. So I'm learning a lot about the geography of the country. I didn't know um, that Blacksburg was 3 hours away from so many places. It's 3 hours away from, so far as I can tell, every place is 3 hours from.
Yeah, it's three
Because people
hours
are
from
like,
every place except for like DC and where I live, but like Charlotte, a lot of places in Tennessee. Like, yeah, there's a nice 3 hour radius.
yeah, but yeah, I'd never really been in that part of that in southwestern Virginia. Like I had never been there, and it's gorgeous, and I had a
It
great time
really
there.
is.
And so you said thank you for having me on, but like thanks to all the Virginia Tech people for showing me a good time on Thursday.
Nice, dude. And I wish you luck. Hopefully, hey, maybe you'll break
Thanks.
that dude's record for 78 games. If you're going to
Oh,
four this week.
I'm not going to get close, but I think I'm
Okay.
going to get to around 60.
Okay.
I think I'm going to get to around 60 when we throw in the bowls. Um,
That's
I
awesome, man. That is awesome.
this I think
Do you need to shout out any sponsors right now while you're on the show?
Hopefield Apparel. It's now a Road Rod sponsored by Money Lion, but I'm
Okay.
not going to do the whole pitch on here. Um, but yeah, just if you look up Road Raj, Rodgee on pretty much every platform, I'm there. So go find my videos and stuff.
Sweet, man. Thank you again for coming on.
I'll
Enjoy
shoot over the
your
Virginia Tech one when I get it up.
Nice, nice. I like it, dude. You have a good day and a safe driving all season long. Good luck this week, man.
Thanks for having me, Pete.
Later. Wow, that was awesome. Thank you to Roger Sherman for coming on my show. It's someone I've followed a long time, and I've had now Spencer Hall with me and Rob earlier in the year, and now we've had Roger Sherman. So this has been a very cool like college football nerd year for me so far with the podcast. we're going to do a little bit of ACC notes now because I didn't get to the ACC games before I had Rodger on because I was kind of saving them to do all at once. And if you were looking at the landscape of college football this week and which conference had the most fun games, I mean, it was probably the Pac-12, but the ACC was right up there. Duke got blanked by Louisville, so that wasn't one of the good games, but it was a ranked matchup. Riley Leonard played. He wasn't good. I wasn't expecting him to play after being banged up yet again against Florida State. Just 121 yards passing for him and no touchdowns, a 32.4 QBR. Jawar Jordan, he's back. He looks healthy. And he went for 163 and 2 touchdowns in this one on just 21 carries. Thrash for Louisville, 7 receptions for 73 yards. Otherwise, there wasn't a whole lot of offense in this game. The teams combined for 4 of 22 on third down. Just wasn't pretty. Only 202 yards for Duke in this one. 10 penalties, which didn't help them. And Louisville looks strong. That is Virginia Tech's next opponent. The thing about Louisville is, I don't know if Jack Plummer, their quarterback, can win a game when the chips are down because they have relied so heavily on Jordan and his excellence. That's what I'm kind of looking at for next week's matchup. And I will talk more about Rob. Jesus. I will talk more with Rob about that later in the year. But it was a great win by the Cards. That was a big win, but I still think they are absolutely beatable by a bird of a different color, maybe a different shade of maroon or red, I should say. GT upsets UNC 46-42. UNC hitting the skids again this year. Yellow Jackets put up 635 yards of offense. It was the most they've ever had against an ACC opponent. They have been in the ACC for 44 years, 43 years, and this was the most offense they ever put up against an ACC opponent. UNC, they were often running early too. But Georgia Tech scored 24 points in the second quarter, kept battling back the whole time. Haynes King was great, 287 passing, 90 rushing, 4 touchdowns for him, a 95 QBR for Haynes King, one of the highest of the weekend. Back-to-back games now where the old UNC defense shows up. And what I mean by that is bad defense. They had no sacks, just 2 TFL, 348 rush yards for Georgia Tech. Running back Dante Smith went for 178 by himself and a touchdown, 8 yards a carry. Hampton was good for UNC. Drake May was good in a losing effort. But now that, they got these 2 losses in the ACC now, their title hopes took a major hit. And I'm going to talk about that ACC race later, but this might have been the death knell for UNC because they got some tough games left still. NC State beat Clemson at home 24-17. State led the entire time. They got up 24-7 before Clemson tried to make it interesting. The Wolfpack won this game with just 202 yards of offense. They won the turnover battle. They had a pick 6. They had a 72-yard touchdown. And Clemson just couldn't score. Their offense, the woes continue. Klubnik wasn't good. He had 2 interceptions. They missed a field goal. Shipley got knocked out of the game. That really hurt their chances. That happened in the second quarter and was a big blow. A lot of short passes for Clemson. 33 completions for the Tigers, just 263 yards passing. A lot of tough conversations for Dabo about to happen this offseason. They're 4-4. They haven't embraced the portal. Name, image, and likeness of Jesus might not be the right name, image, and likeness to actually win football games. And I'm not trying to be rude to anyone, any of my religious friends out there. I'm just kind of making a joke about Dabo's commentary with regard to NIL. They're the only team essentially not the only team in the ACC, but they're eliminated from ACC contention. They're 4-4 after, they have 4 losses, 2-4 in the conference, and they're not making the ACC title game. They're just not. Miami outlasts UVA 29-26 in overtime. UVA started out the game 10-0 and went into the half up 10-3. But Miami roared back in the third. They had a run and a pick six. It was 17-10 Miami before Holland scored again to make it, I guess it was, well, whatever. This went on, like the back and forth kind of went on until Miami's game-tying field goal with 1:23 left. UVA goes first in overtime, kicks a field goal. Wasn't good enough. Miami's Mark Fletcher fought his way in for the game-winning touchdown. TVD, Tyler Van Dyke, was not good in this game. 20 of 30, but just 163 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Malik Washington was amazing for UVA. He caught 12 balls, 152 yards. If Musket had just been a little bit better, UVA could have won this game. But Miami had 6 sacks and enough athletes to overcome Cristobal's always terrible game management. But UVA played well. I don't know what happened during UVA's bye week, but they have been so much more competitive. And Miami escapes with a narrow victory. Notre Dame stomped Pitt. I'm starting to round out the ACC action here. 58-7. This is normally one of those games where Pitt gets up, and even if Pitt's having a bad year and Notre Dame's having a good year, Pitt will make it a game. That did not happen. Vayu, and it's not Valu for Pitt, the quarterback's name. It's like Vayu or something else. I don't know how to pronounce it exactly. He threw 4 interceptions. I probably won't have to be pronouncing it for too much longer. Sam Hartman wasn't great either. 2 interceptions, no touchdowns for him, but he did throw for 288, 11.5 yards per attempt. But Estime was efficient once again, 114 yards, 6 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns for Estime. Pitt just sucks. I don't know how they beat Louisville. I know Jordan got hurt, but they are so bad. And Narduzzi's comments after that got tweeted out, and it kind of was taken out of context because he did say like multiple times, like the coaches didn't do enough. Like it's on me. I didn't get my players prepared. But there was a viral tweet that went out with his quote that was like, we tried to replace the players from last season and we didn't do a good job. And that got quote tweeted by a handful of current Pitt players who were just like, dang, man, that's not cool, to paraphrase. So it's ugly right now in Pittsburgh. Not sure how that's going to play out. They're just 2 years removed from winning the ACC with Kenny Pickett. But like Dabo, Narduzzi is a stubborn SOB. You know, he had a great passing offense and he didn't like it. Whipple left for Nebraska and he went back to the old school run game. And it hasn't worked out. It has not worked out for Pitt. And I got to say, I love to see it. FSU took care of Wake 41-16. Never close, never really interesting. And this was without a handful of dinged up guys for Florida State too. Travis went for 388 total, 4 touchdowns, 82.4 QBR. Jordan Travis continues to be awesome. Benson had 155, 2 TDs. Coleman, 2 TDs. BC hung on for a 21-14 win over UConn. BC ran for 246. That's what they do this year. They like to run the ball. Robichal, 112 and 2 touchdowns. A bunch of close games for BC this year. Another 1-score win. They could be 6-2. They could be 2-6 with a loss to Holy Cross. But as it stands, they are 5-3 and inexplicably still in the ACC race with a number of other teams because they only have 2 conference losses. I want to talk about that ACC race. I want to go back to VT Corner. I'm going to go to my AP poll. My interview with Roger, it went on a little bit longer, but I'm going to get to all the stuff here. Other notable games around the country, 2 late backdoor covers. I saw UCLA beat Colorado, but Colorado scored a late touchdown kind of in garbage time to cover the game. The UCLA defense was dominant, and that's what's funny about UCLA this year. I don't like Chip Kelly, and the way that they're winning and the way they've been playing is a large credit to the defense, which really isn't his thing. Their defensive line for UCLA is ridiculous. And Colorado can't block anybody. So really well done by UCLA to just dominate on that side of the ball and beat Colorado. Tulane held on to Beatrice, but Rice got back in the game. It was 27-7 in this game. Tulane had the lead before letting Rice back in, but I had both Colorado and Rice in my pick'em to cover. So that worked out well for me. Penn State was in a dogfight with Indiana. And that was a game where I was kind of expecting Penn State to bounce back big from the Ohio State game. The spread was 31.5. So clearly that's what the nation or Vegas thought. No, this was a fight the whole way through. If Tom Allen didn't play for the tie towards the end, Indiana might have won this game. The Nittany Lions are going to get stomped by Michigan if they don't figure out this offense. I mean, they got a late long touchdown, which is something that's been talked about a lot, how they never go down the field. But if they play like this, it's not just that they won't beat Michigan, it's that they will get embarrassed by Michigan if they play like this. Texas stifled BYU 35-6. Malik Murphy in at quarterback for the Longhorns. He wasn't great, but they focused on the run, did Texas, and the defense was good for the Longhorns. K-State continues to roll. This team, they're getting to that wagon status along with Oklahoma State. Kansas State won 41-0 over Houston. Houston isn't just complete trash. K-State is working people right now. Ollie Gordon for Oklahoma State, another 271 rushing for him in a 45-13 win. Both those teams are kicking butt. We get Oklahoma State, Oklahoma later this week. That's going to be sweet. Iowa State beat Baylor. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because Iowa State has moved to 4-1 in the Big 12. They have almost as good a shot of any of going to that Big 12 championship game. Matt Campbell has taken those young guys and gotten them playing right. Maybe not beating all the best teams, but 4-1 in the conference. Can't argue with it. A&M beat South Carolina. Not good for Shane. He's 2-6. The state of South Carolina. A little bit of a rough weekend. Coastal's good, but the two big boys, it's not pretty right now. Tennessee beat Kentucky 33-27. SMU throttled Tulsa 69-10. Future ACC member SMU. I'm a little worried about SMU. All that money they raised in a short period of time, starting to kick ass. Could they come into the ACC and be in the championship game in a couple years? It could happen. Air Force stays undefeated, beating Colorado State in the snow 30-13, and that was with State wearing those sweet uniforms, but Air Force stays undefeated. Boise whipped Wyoming, which is a result I was not expecting, on the blue turf, 32-7. I thought Wyoming was still the best team in the Mountain West. I may be wrong about that. Liberty, undefeated still, beat Western Kentucky 42-29. Ugh, Liberty. And Sam Houston still winless after failing to beat, I think it was UTEP. The Fighting Cornelsons couldn't get it done. AP poll. Let me show you what I got here. All right, you will see JMU moves up to number 23 after their win. Just 2 ACC teams ranked this week. That's largely due to the conference cannibalizing itself. FSU is at number 4, Louisville at number 15, and UNC and Duke have dropped out. 6 teams each from the Pac-12 and the SEC. The top 1-loss team in the country is Oregon, followed by Texas and Alabama. Oklahoma drops to 10 after their loss, and they play OK State, as I mentioned, who isn't ranked, but Oklahoma State is technically number 26, just behind Kansas State, who does get into the rankings. Notre Dame is the top 2-loss team, right in front of LSU at number 12 and 13. That's Notre Dame and LSU, 12 and 13. But why isn't Louisville in front of Notre Dame? One, they beat Notre Dame, for one thing, the biggest thing. Second of all, Notre Dame has 2 losses. Louisville has 1. I know it was to Pitt, but come on, they beat them and they have 1 less loss. It is ridiculous that Louisville isn't ahead of Notre Dame. And maybe you could say LSU is better than Louisville. I'm fine with that. But Louisville literally beat Notre Dame. It wasn't particularly close. Louisville should be ahead of Notre Dame in these rankings. That's what pisses me off this week. Undefeated Air Force, number 17. Utah dropped to 18. I mentioned JMU at 23 and Kansas State at number 25. Let's go back to VT Corner quickly. I talked a little bit about it with Roger. We talked more about the atmosphere and everything. Hokies won 38-10. It wasn't even that close. We settled for a handful of field goals. That touchdown that Syracuse scored, I mean, it was in the second half where we really weren't even trying much. Kyron wasn't totally sharp in this one, but he did just fine. considering how our defense was playing and how we were working the run game. 15 of 24 for drones, 194 to touchdown, 56 yards rushing. So I said he wasn't sharp, but like he still went for 250 total. Malachi actually matched him in touchdown passes because of that sweet trick play we ran. That one went to Felton. That was one of Felton's 2 touchdowns in this game. Tootin was awesome running the ball, 118 and a touchdown, 6.6 yards per carry for Bayshaw. Consistent chunks of yardage because he really didn't have a long run. He was just getting 7, 8, 10 like every single time he touched the ball. Malachi added 87 yards rushing. As a team, we ran for 318. That was the most on the ground since the UVA game in 2021, which I didn't even really remember that we ran for that much that game. But really nice rushing performance on defense because we allowed 0 yards rushing on defense and 318 on offense. And the defense really was lights out all night. Just 137 yards total given up and 8 sacks. APR, he was shot out of a cannon early. He went to the side, did the spin move, forced a bad throw, or forced the intentional grounding right off the bat. He had 2 sacks in the game. Syracuse was 0 for 9 on third down. So if it felt like they were never on the field, that's because they weren't. They only had the ball for about 18 minutes of the game. It was our most time of possession, I think, since pre-Beamer in a game. I will fact check that when I go do my pod with Robbie later in the week, but it was just a dominant performance. I was trying to remember the last time we owned someone this badly because we played well in the Wake game, played well in the Pitt game, but this kind of domination, you have to go back to the back-to-back shutouts on Bud's like kind of swan song when Bud was retiring. We beat Pitt 28-0, but the Georgia Tech game, I think, was the one that reminded me of the most. 45-0. We beat Georgia Tech in 2019. GT only had 2.39 yards per play. I think Syracuse was over 3 in this game because they ran so few plays. It was the second fewest plays since 1987 that we had faced. But yeah, if you're looking for a game that the last game we dominated this badly, I would say it was the Georgia Tech game from 2019. Robbie and I will talk more about the Syracuse game and about the big matchup with Louisville on our Wednesday night show this week. Really looking forward to that Louisville game. And that's going to bring me to my possibility of Tech getting to the ACC title game. And it's never, you never want to count your chickens before they're hatched, but I still think let's be prepared for possibilities. Let's have some fun with this, right? Clemson, Wake, and Cuse, they all have 4 losses in the conference. UVA and Pitt have 3. For all intents and purposes, those 5 teams are essentially done. Everyone else in the conference has 2 or less losses. Louisville and VT are the only teams besides Florida State that have 1 loss or less. They both have 1, and we play this week. And both teams' schedules are very manageable outside of playing each other. And you could say that like VT isn't even the hardest game left on the schedule for Louisville because they have to go to Miami at one point. And a lot of people would probably consider Miami to be a better team than Virginia Tech, though we may be playing better than Miami right now. So we play Louisville's just to go to Miami. And you guys know our schedule. It's BC, it's UVA, it's NC State, NC State got a big win. BC's running the ball well. UVA's looking feisty. Like none of these games are absolute wins, but none of them are surefire losses either. BC and Duke have the 2 easiest schedules left, according to the FPI. But I don't think BC can get there. I think either we'll beat them or someone else could beat them. Duke could get there, but they looked bad this week on offense. Riley's still not healthy, and they got to play UNC. And that's a rivalry game, and USC's reeling a bit, but who knows who's going to come out on top in that one. GT and NC State, they seem too inconsistent to get to the championship. And again, NC State's another team that we play at home, and a game I think we very much can and should win. So I feel okay about being above those teams. UNC lost to Georgia Tech just most recently, as you know, They play Duke. They play at Clemson. They play at NC State. So in a perfect world, we'd like UNC to beat Duke and then lose to on the road to Clemson and NC State, both or one or whatever. Miami squeaked by UVA, as you know, to stay in the hunt, but they have 3 road games, including Florida State and then a home game against Louisville. So Miami's schedule is brutal. I'm not, with the way they just looked, I'm not worried about them being potentially ahead of us in a race. But for us, it comes down to this weekend. If we want any shot of going to the title game, we have to beat Louisville on the road. And that is an extremely tall task. Louisville looks like, if you're handicapping it, they're the team to beat to go to the ACC title game and face Florida State for number 2 in the ACC. And we're 10-point underdogs right now. As I said, me and Rob will get into this, but like, I think we're going to go up there and we're going to give them a fight. I really do. And man, I wish I could be on the Bourbon Trail this week and go attend that game because it just sounds like so much fun. All right, let's move to playoff 4. All right, you'll notice another change this week. And I'm a little annoyed. And I talked about Oklahoma earlier in the show. I never felt great about having them in the 4. And this is, I'm not doing a LeBron where I'm like, I knew it. Like I'm not doing that. Like when I say something, I don't like to lie on this show. I never felt good about it. I probably said it the last 2 weeks. They had beaten Texas. It was a good win. They were undefeated. They had a very manageable schedule. Really, the biggest hiccup at the time when I put them in was Kansas on the road. But now, with the way Oklahoma State's playing, Oklahoma's probably going to lose that one too. Anyway, Oklahoma is out. Georgia is back in. They look strong against UF. I probably never should have taken Georgia out. Maybe I was trying to go contrarian. But Georgia hadn't been looking amazing earlier this year. They had been in a bunch of tight games against lesser teams, and they were probably playing around with different lineups and just figuring things out. But Carson Beck looks like a real dude. And so they're my number 2 team. Michigan is still my number 1 team. Florida State still my number 3 team because I think they're running the table most likely. Like, would I love to get another shot at Florida State and see what we could do in an AC title game? Yeah. Could Louisville beat them? Yeah. But right now I'm predicting Florida State to go undefeated and be in the playoffs. And then Oregon, I think, is winning out. And I think they are going to beat Washington in the championship game. If Washington gets there, because with how shaky they looked, who knows? They could take a couple losses and miss the title game. But Oregon, they're going to run the table and be in my playoff 4, which means I am leaving out the Big 12 because Texas has a loss. Oklahoma has a loss. Texas has the injury to Ewers. Oklahoma has a really tough game this weekend. I think both those teams could end up with 2 losses, but even if one of those teams ends up with just the 1 loss, I think Oregon's strength of schedule with 1 loss will be better than theirs. I think the committee would put Oregon in. So that's my playoff 4. Michigan 1, Georgia 2, Florida State 3, and Oregon number 4. All right, before I go to this upcoming weekend's games and just talk about them a little bit, I want to mention Compass Coffee because with 16 locations in DC and Northern VA, they are quickly becoming the go-to cup of joe in our nation's capital. Compass was founded by 2 Marines with a simple goal: make the best cup of coffee, one that points you in the right direction every day, kind of like a compass. Right now, they're offering our listeners 20% off with code TUDIVT. So go to their site or download the Compass Coffee app. They have a great app. Load up your cart. And even if you don't live in the DC area, they'll ship it right to your house and you'll get 20% off that order. Compass Coffee, great coffee, doesn't need to be complicated. Week 10 games. VT at Louisville, I already talked about it. Louisville, 10.5-point favorites right now. I feel good about the Hokies. Mizzou at UGA. Georgia, 16.5-point favorites. That's a big game. Mizzou has a good quarterback. They've been a feisty team. This being in Athens, I think Georgia has geared up at the right time to face a pretty solid Mizzou team, and they'll probably take care of their business. Notre Dame at Clemson. Clemson just 3-point underdogs in this one. That shocked me. That is a stinky line for the way Clemson's been playing. We know Clemson is a solid team still, but if Shipley can't play and they continue to not find playmakers and Klubnik continues to struggle, I don't know how Clemson's going to cover that game. A&M at Ole Miss. Ole Miss 4.5-point favorites. This could be a game where Ole Miss gets had, even at home, because they're not a great team. They're a good team. Lane has them going good, but A&M's been good too. So that's a fun game. K-State at Texas. That is an awesome game because K-State has been rolling. Texas, they struggled with Houston. They looked good against BYU. They're 5.5-point favorites at home. Oklahoma at Oklahoma State. We got Bedlam. Oklahoma State. Wait, is this right? 6.5-point favorites, Oklahoma State. I'm going to check this again. Washington at USC. USC, 3.5-point underdogs at home, but I think they could pull off the win. I know I've been ragging on USC all year, but Washington has had 4 straight games, less than 10-point wins, a couple dicey games against lesser teams. I think USC could win that game outright. UCLA at Arizona. Arizona podcast here. Arizona 1.5-point underdogs at home against UCLA. Fafita against that defense. That's going to be awesome. JMU at Georgia State. Let's go outside the P5. Georgia State's been a good team. They're a 5.5-point underdog. That's one of the closer lines we've seen for a team against JMU lately. That could potentially be a dangerous spot for JMU going down to Georgia State. And then the last game I want to mention is Boise at Fresno. Always a great game in the Mountain West. Fresno is 4-point favorites right now. Boise just whipped Wyoming last week. So do they come off that win and go down to Fresno and play well and maybe win again? That's a tough one. But I did want to check. I want to check that Oklahoma State line because Oklahoma State I have listed as 6.5-point favorites, which wouldn't necessarily surprise me with how they've been playing, but that's a big line. Give me 1 second here. Oh yeah, we got Jacksonville State in South Carolina. Oh, look out, Shane. Oh man, that's a scary one. No, Oklahoma. I have it written down wrong. Oklahoma, 5.5-point favorites right now on the road. Okay, so I wrote that down wrong. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope if you didn't get to hear my interview with Roger Sherman earlier, the link works the same. You can start the podcast over and find it. This will get posted to the podcast feed later in the day. For now, make sure you're subscribed to the 2 Deep podcast feed. Follow us on Twitter. It's at 2DeepVT. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure you like the video. Please like the video. It helps us. And I appreciate all the people who hopped into College Football Monday. We're starting to get more live viewers and more views overall. So the show is growing. And some of that's probably contributed to my very, very awesome guest today. But thanks for joining me. And until next time, when I'm talking with Rob about the Louisville game, go Hokies.